What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Welcome to our show. It's Wednesday, February 6, 2019, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauhana Friday. And we have got a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and opinions. So let's get right on into it now. Obviously, last night was the State of the Union speech, and depending upon which media outlet you're getting your news from, it was either a great speech or Trump was just, being bad president, no cookie. But he opened the speech, pardon me, by praising World War II veterans. Yeah, there were three in the crowd who were part of the Europe campaign during World War II. And so Trump began with that. At one point, he led a chorus of happy birthday to you to a Holocaust survivor they had in the audience. So, they had one of everything in there to make the points with. Overall, though, Trump's speech, he was not aggressive. He was not abusive. In fact, he hovered on the edge of being a little bit conciliatory. He's playing politics here. And basically went on saying, tonight I ask you to choose greatness. And, of course, Trump's idea of greatness involves several agendas: reducing the cost of health care and the price of prescription drugs. Immigration, made a big thing about the border wall, but did not declare a national emergency. And unfortunately, continue to pursue a foreign policy that puts Americans first by bombing everybody else into the rubble. He talked about the INF Treaty. He talked about a new state-of-the-art missile defense system. Trump is trying to revive Reagan's Star Wars strategic defense initiative here. And he did take a couple of jabs, if you will, at the Democrats, talking about foolish wars, ridiculous probes, and basically saying, if we're going to get things going, all of this nonsense has to go away. If there's going to be peace and legislation, there must not be war and investigation. It just doesn't work that way. Now, getting on back to the border, Trump said that Congress has a moral duty to address the national crisis at the border, and he called for bipartisan support, wants both parties to join forces and confront the urgent national crisis of illegal immigration streaming through the open portions of the border. And just now, as we were going to air, they were running a banner on Fox News that Nancy Pelosi says she's now open to a bipartisan deal. But it may be, again, a deal where they're going to give money to INS and ICE and buy some whiz-bang technology. But again, Pelosi's going to say no money for the wall. They don't want that wall to be there at all. It's getting in the way of future Democratic voters here. Overall, though, and this is coming from the Political Insider, Trump's State of the Union earned positive reviews. And much to the annoyance of the Democrats, the first polls that were done, 76% of Americans approve of what Donald Trump said in the State of the Union. 72% approve of the president's ideas for immigration. And, of course, the liberals are not happy about that. Bernie Sanders called the State of the Union speech racist and said he's trying to divide us all up. And so that was his blistering rebuttal, and he zeroed in heavily on Trump's claims about the economy. And the Vermont senator noted that Trump was correct in contending the economy is doing well, but he argued it's only benefiting a small number of wealthy people. Well, Bernie does have that one right. Meanwhile, out in Hollywood, even before the speech had happened, even before it happened, the celebs were out there just tweeting away. Let's see. Rob Reiner, heavy liberal there, tweeted out that the State of the Union can never be strong if it's headed by a pathological liar. It can never be strong if it's headed by a misogynist. It can never be strong if it is headed by a racist. And it can never be strong if it's headed by a self-serving criminal. The State of the Union is rancid. This was from filmmaker Rob Reiner. And again, it was before the State of the Union actually occurred. Now, actor John Cusack was calling for a boycott of the State of the Union. I guess he was in that same mindset as Maxine Waters, who was telling everybody yesterday, turn it off, don't watch at all. And Cusack later called Trump a gangster, child abducting murderer. I'm not sure. I think that borders on libelous. Actress and Democratic activist Alyssa Milano used the hashtags State of the Woman and State of the Human to reply to points made by the president. She, among others, responded with links to graphics that argued against the president's points. And in case anyone was wondering, Milano was also criticizing the State of the Union hours before it occurred. So even before it aired, Milano was saying that Trump was using the State of the Union as a bully puppet for his dangerous policies. Now, actor and comedian John Fugelsang gave a rude commentary on the address, and I think he went over a line here. He said, "I don't wish any physical harm to ever come to Donald Trump. I wish him good health and a long life. Having said that, when his funeral finally happens, I got $50 that says Melania brings a date." I think that was totally uncalled for, and it's way over the line. And remember, these are entertainers. And they're trying to use their celebrity status to basically undermine the president's State of the Union speech and keep pushing that liberal agenda. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, the Iranian foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, went on Twitter following the State of the Union speech and basically chastised Trump for saying that Iran was the world's leading sponsor of terror and a corrupt dictatorship. And Zarif responded by saying it's been U.S. support of dictators, butchers, and extremists that ruined the Middle East. And he's got that one right. Apparently, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is upset that Trump used the State of the Union address to vow America will never be a socialist country. So Trump went on out and said, America was founded on liberty and independence, not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free. We will stay free. Now, as you know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and quite a few of the liberal Democrats, they're socialists. They want to bring communism to this country, despite the fact that communism wrecked the Soviet Union. Now, just to let you know how rancorous this all is, there was something that happened during the State of the Union. It got caught on camera. The video has gone viral. And it started when Arizona Democrat Senator Kirsten Sinema basically stood up to applaud for American success under Trump administration. And fellow Democrat Senator Jackie Rosen turns to her and says, "Watch your rear end," although she doesn't use the phrase rear end. And just so much bitterness in the face there. We've lost all civility in this government. During the State of the Union speech, Nancy Pelosi basically sat in her chair reading and just had a stone face. When she did clap, it was done overblown, and Twitter went wild with her sarcastic applause here. But she was definitely not happy that Trump was there. And remember how hard Pelosi tried to cancel the State of the Union. So it is definitely getting rancorous. By the way, speaking of Nancy Pelosi, something has surfaced. Nancy Pelosi has this quote that she claims is from the Bible. And the quote goes, "To minister to the needs of God's creation is an act of worship. To ignore those needs is to dishonor the God who made us all." And she uses it all the time. She used it in a speech last week at the Council for Christian Colleges and Universities. It turns out, though, that quote is not, in fact, in the Bible. There's nothing even really close to it. But it sure sounds good. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, as you know, is seen by many as a rising star. She is not the chosen rising star. That's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But Gabbard is clearly rising. She's very, very popular. And a lot of that comes from her being anti-war. Now, for most of the Democratic Party positions, she's on board. Gay rights, gun control, health care, and redistributive tax policy. But on the crucial issue of foreign wars, she's a dissenter. And as far as we can tell, that's coming from a principled position, probably because she served in the military herself. And right now, of course, that makes her persona non grata in the current political climate. They don't want anybody who's against the war. And something very weird happened. For some reason, David Duke, who was former Grand Wizard of the KKK, he's since reformed, offered an endorsement to Tulsi Gabbard. And she rejected it, which was the smart thing to do because it would be used against her. And all David Duke tweeted out was, finally a candidate for president who will really put America first, which I don't think is that offensive. But Tulsi turned him down. And I'm still trying to figure out, did David Duke just not understand the potential damage that he could do to Tulsi's campaign with that, or was he coerced into doing that in order to damage her campaign? Because she's a target. She's already a target. They want her out. They want her gone. Right now, the mainstream media is pushing Kamala Harris. I mean, she's doing terrible in the polls, single digits, and yet for some reason the corporate media, oh yeah, she's the darling. She's going to be it for 2020. All right, let's take a phone call. Joe in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Kamala Harris for dog catcher.
Yes.
Mike, that was a lovely quote from Nancy Pelosi. It's just a shame she doesn't demonstrate that compassion towards the infants that her allies are killing all over the country.
True.
Mike, you've been talking about this wall that Mexico has on its southern border with Central America, and how you say it's very imposing. And if it's such a imposing wall, then how are these caravans getting through?
Well, they're basically going to areas where the walls don't exist. That wall is not complete. And, you know, back in, I think it was 1996, Congress actually did pass a bill to build 300 miles of fence. I'm sorry, 700 miles of fence, a significant portion of that southern border. And unfortunately, only 33 miles of it got built. And so it's really a mess. A lot of the existing border wall is run down, deteriorated, corroded. It's got tunnels dug underneath it. And, you know, the illegal immigrants will just bring like large mattresses with them and throw them over the concertina wire on the top and just hop on over.
No, but I mean the wall on the Mexican border, the Mexico's southern border with Central America.
Well, that's a good solid wall, and unfortunately, it looks like you know, they're breaking through, they're cutting through, or in some cases, Mexico's just letting them come on in.
Okay, yeah, that's a possibility. Mexico is just maybe
it's definitely
the
a
government's
possibility.
just letting them in. Okay, but I was disappointed with Trump's speech last night. I just feel like, especially I think it became an evening to discuss the Holocaust, and I think this was obviously meant to justify these anti-First Amendment laws against any criticism of Israel. And I believe the long game is to silence any opposition to Israeli wholesale ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. That's the long game.
Well, that's definitely it. Israel does not want to be criticized for anything it does, and that's why they're working to get these laws passed in this country, which are all unconstitutional. They are an attack on our First Amendment. And we cannot allow any exceptions to the First Amendment, because if they carve out an exception for Israel, then they'll carve out one for vaccine safety, then they'll carve one out for GMOs. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez the other day was screaming that social media should be blocking anybody who questions human-caused global warming. I mean, this is the mindset they've got. Silence the opposition, silence dissent.
Well, let's see where these groups like, you mentioned Judicial Watch, and you mentioned another group. I don't recall that.
Freedom Watch.
Freedom Watch. Let's see where they stand on this issue. Let's see who's actually bankrolling them. Because I would like to see them take the case to appeal this to the Supreme Court. But if they don't, then we know where they're getting their funding from.
Well, somebody somewhere is going to have to come up with the means to make a constitutional challenge to this law. Starting with the federal courts, and just start the process going, because this is absolutely unacceptable to have a government that is throwing out one of our most cherished rights, or damaging our rights, betraying our right on behalf of a foreign nation. That, to me, is unacceptable.
I mean, you have people, and he says a lot of sensible things, Joe from Tennessee, but I think he and a lot of others like him who call the show, they are basically card-carrying members of the Trump cult. They just can't accept that they were wrong and they were taken in by this snake oil salesman. So, and I'm tired of hearing people like him and this QAnon where they were saying indictments are imminent. In major indictments against creatures of the swamp creatures. It ain't going to happen, folks. It ain't going to happen. So just forget about it.
Yeah, it's another bit of fake news to make the internet look kooky, and to convince us that we don't need to do anything to make the country better because Batman is coming to the rescue, or Roy Rogers and Dale Evans are riding over there. Yeah, because we've been raised to think that way. We've been raised to, watch
Rivero, man.
Yeah, Rivero. We've been raised with TV shows and movies where always at the end, somebody will come on in to save the day and save everybody. And so they're trying to exploit that social conditioning here, that if we just sit here and do nothing, somebody is coming to save the day.
Well, we're the Rivero Rangers, Mike, and we'll be behind you every step of the way.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate it. I do appreciate it greatly.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open. All right. Getting away from the State of the Union and to more general domestic politics here. Eric Holder has come on out saying he may mount a primary challenge against Trump in 2020. And Trump responded that Holder should be careful for what he wishes for, and that if he did run, the primaries would gobble him up. And given the amount of election fraud that's going on, which Trump has not really decisively dealt with, I don't think it's a given. I mean, the inside political machine in Washington, D.C., they want Trump gone. And just like they rigged the Democratic primaries for Hillary Clinton, they could rig the Republican primaries against Donald Trump. And that is just the reality of the country that we are living in right now. Okay. Apparently, questions are being raised about Ruth Bader Ginsburg because it was reported in the media that she attended a musical at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. Washington Post reported it, AP reported it, but everybody who was there said no, they didn't see her. There are no pictures showing that she was there. So people are starting to wonder, what is Ruth Bader Ginsburg's health condition right now? We'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go right back to the phones to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I actually didn't watch the State of the... I mean, I voted for Trump. I watched every debate. I watched him, I was like, yeah, Trump, man, getting in, he's going to fix things. And Mike, I don't think he's going to fix things. It's like, like I voted for Obama too, because I vote Democrat in New Jersey because, but I lean more for Republican issues like abortion and this or that. But I mean, I'm always duped. We get duped.
Yeah, we do. We do. Doesn't matter who we vote for. We still get the wars. We still, yeah, things are still getting worse.
But Trump showed we've been all duped. Not Trump, but he showed the system itself, like what it is. It doesn't matter who's in, like you said. It's the system is corrupt. I mean, I want to make America great again, Mike, but you can't be in an empire. You can't. Those two can't coexist in the same space.
No,
right?
No, you can't.
George Washington fought against an empire. We've become an empire, and that includes the British, the French, the Saudis, the Israeli, the Canadian. It's just this one big oligarch group. And Mike, I watched the recaps of the State of the Union, and he blamed Russia for the Russians didn't break the INF treaty with the Iskander missile that up to 500 kilometers. It was like 480 or something. I mean, for a ground-based missile, we got cruise missiles that go further than that in the extended ranges they use in Syria that most likely we have ground-based. And Mike, remember the satellite photos that just came out from Raytheon showing they're already built buildings? So those buildings were built months ago.
Yeah.
To build intermediate range. So this is all BS. But did you notice Trump mentioned the Chinese after that? So
yes, I did.
I mean, yeah, so it's all a game. It's all a game, but you know what's scary, Mike? If it doesn't go right to bring the Chinese in, which it's not gonna, I mean, then Europe's a nuclear battlefield, like with placing, intermediate range, ballistic missiles over there, short and, but this is where we're at. I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's just the border wall is important,
yes,
and stuff like that. But I mean, so is this stuff, and removing the troops out of the Middle East, and not letting Venezuela lift. How about lifting the sanctions on them, returning to what they were? Why can't we just go back to what it was?
Well, because America, the U.S. government wants this country to be an empire. And this goes all the way back to the 1990s, and an organization called the Project for the New American Century. And it was a think tank, and they were writing these policy papers, one of which was Rebuilding America's Defenses, where basically the position they were taking, the agenda they were pushing was that at that time, America was the world's only remaining superpower. They should act like one and basically start taking over all these other countries, and it was going to take 100 years to do. And that's where that whole policy came from, and they've been following that policy ever since. And so the U.S. government isn't interested in partnering with anybody anymore.
But the problem, but Mike, the problem is I'm not a globalist, but the whole economic system is built about that now. Like, how do you know what I mean? Like, the Chinese are number one economic in terms of the PPP economic scale.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And by 2030, India's going to be number two, and we're going to be number three. So, and then you see GM laying off people and stuff. I mean, nothing's being built. Like, was there a new factory built lately? Because, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, GM's laying off people, 20,000, Mike. 4,200 is going to be the first batch.
Yes.
And it's going to be a quarter of them white collar. The rest is blue collar, and then whatever the third party companies making stuff for. But that impacts steel, right? The steel industry.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
I'm saying, what's being built though, Mike? Like, what new factories have been built? What new steel mills have been built? What the same rotting infrastructure is still in Detroit and all these other places, and I don't see anything being built in terms of manufacturing. Do you?
Well, I imagine that just as we are seeing out in Arizona in that satellite photo, that we are seeing factories being built that will make the machinery of war. because that's where the economic focus is. We're in a wartime economy. They don't want to admit it, but that's what's going on. All of the wealth of this nation is being spent on weapons of war, and they're not getting very good value for their money, which we've talked about before. But yeah, somewhere out there in the deserts, in remote locations, I'm sure that there are factories that are being built. Tesla, of course, built a factory, but apparently that wasn't done very well. And there is a weakness that we're having to deal with. The people who know how to set up factories and make them work, they left this country long ago. So,
but that's what we're at then, Mike. We're like Rome, a welfare and a warfare state. We have nothing else to offer. Just making weapons and a welfare state. That's it.
That's it.
All right, Mike, have a good show. I'm so aggravated. Have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to go to the phones to Art off the grid. Aloha, Art. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, earlier was mentioned about what I call the assault on the First Amendment. And it was interesting that topic was brought up because I just learned today about this Strengthening America's Security in the Middle East Act of 2019. And I don't know if you've read this, but this is like really interesting because it actually gets to the point, it talks about, transferring weapons to Israel and extending, military funding to Israel and more loans to Israel and all of the typical stuff. But then it goes so far as to get into, actually, they use the word divest, but it gets to the point where it actually says, and here is in the summary, it says this: the bill allows a state or local government to adopt measures to divest its assets from entities using boycotts, divestments, and sanctions to influence Israel's policy. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the right to boycott or something like that, isn't that like a First Amendment right to?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But
here it is. They now have federal legislation that says you can now. I mean, hell, after all, they did pass a law making it illegal to propagandize the people. So now they literally pass a law that makes it a criminal offense, if the state wants to pursue it, makes it a criminal offense to exercise your right to free speech and protest.
Well, there's another aspect of this, and this is for all the people who live in these states and counties that have these rules saying that the local governments will not do business with any local businesses who support BDS. It means that the people of those states and counties may not be getting the best possible goods and services for their tax dollars because all of that money, of course, is going to companies that are pro-Israel.
Yep. And so one more comment, and I'll let you get on. But think about this, folks. You know who's running the show when you know who you can't talk about.
Yes.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open. All right, so let's talk about Venezuela. And apparently Sputnik was interviewing journalist Ollie Richardson. And Ollie basically came on out and said, America knows very well Maduro is the legitimate president. He won the last election. Guido hasn't even run. And this is just, it's a coup d'etat. There's no question about it. Now, Moscow is slamming the EU states for trying to legitimize an attempt to usurp power in Venezuela after a number of key European countries recognized opposition figure Juan Guaido as interim president. And basically the Kremlin is saying this is a direct interference in Venezuela's internal affairs, and they're absolutely right about that. Pardon me. So the Russian Foreign Ministry has come on out and indicated it has no intentions of communicating with Guaido. They say Guaido is not independent. He coordinates his every move with a foreign country, guess which one, and Moscow sees no point in communicating with a dependent figure. Now, when Guido declared himself the interim president of Venezuela in late January, Moscow slammed the actions of the Speaker of the opposition-dominated National Assembly as an attempt to usurp power, and insisted that no one but democratically elected President Nicolas Maduro could be the legitimate leader of the country. And you've got basically the United States is holding Guido's leash. And they're still trying to pile up the pressure over there. Meanwhile, the other Caribbean nations are shooting their hands up into the air, trying to get the attention of people and saying, look, we have to have some input on what's going on here. Because what happens in Venezuela greatly affects the rest of the Caribbean basin. And we have to have our needs addressed. I think they're going to get left aside here. Okay, there is this coalition of Latin American countries that just met in Canada, and they've basically come on out ordering global powers to stop trading gold assets with Maduro. They just came on out and said, don't do it. They're trying to economically strangle him. Bank of England is now out there saying, see, we were ahead of the trend. Story coming on out of Russia today. The EU states fold like cheap tents to U.S. demands on Venezuela. Italy, one of the few to stay. And for the European Union, Italy has become that turbulent priest of whom they wish they could be rid, the fly in the ointment, the spanner in the works of the neoliberalism and war. And again, vassal states. All right, we're going to take another call here. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike? Mike, you know, I saw a interview that RT did, not with somebody from Venezuela, but RT on YouTube yesterday with Maduro.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, the man comes off as a very, very rational, decent human being. As a matter of fact, they try to point him out as a communist. They even mention the fact that he's a Christian. You know, he's a strict and a believer in God and all that.
Yep.
And he believes in democracy. Because you're a socialist does not mean you're a communist. Not at all. And this country, I'm getting ashamed. You know, I'm almost ashamed. I hate to say I'm ashamed of being American because I love this country. But when I look at the leadership, when I look at a demon like Bolton and some of the stuff he's basically telling them he wants to starve them, to all intents and purposes,
yep,
and all that, and Pompeo, it starts making me feel, you know, how can we have men like this in positions of power? And I can't, and it makes me lose all my any support I have for Trump, no matter, even though supposedly the economy is good and all this other stuff. I just can't, you know, I can't go for that. I'm right now, I'm putting all my support, anything I can do to help Tulsi Gabbard become president of the United States. I really think she's going to be, I think she's what this country needs. I saw her speech.
They'll never let her close to the nomination. I'm sorry, that's
I don't think she's going to be able
the reality.
I really don't think, you know, unless they put a bullet in her head, they're not going to be able to stop her. I really don't believe.
They'll find a political way, you know, like this stunt with David Duke, or they'll find something, you know, or there'll be some young boy that accuses Tulsi of underage sex or something. You know, there are. I mean, we're still at the start of 2019, and already they're working to chip away at her campaign. Now, I like Tulsi. I don't agree with a lot of things she supports, like gun control, but she is apparently genuinely anti-war.
I don't think that's going to work like with David Duke, for one thing. For one thing, I use that stupid term, but actually she qualifies as a woman of color, whatever that's supposed to mean. I mean, we're all
she's
color.
Samoan American.
She's Samoan American, exactly. So that's not. I don't see how that nonsense with David Duke is going to work on her. They tried it with Trump, but it really didn't even work there. So how it's going to work with her, I don't know. You know, they're going to try everything, but I think it's going to backfire on them. I really do. People are getting smart, Mike. It's not the same thing anymore. You know who watches mainstream media now? People our age and older. Okay, that's who basically watch. I'm one of the odd ones. I get my news now from almost all from the internet. I got rid of cable TV, as a matter of fact. I'm using Apple TV right now, and I get a lot more everything I need as far as news goes on there from YouTube and a couple other things that I go on, and other internet sites. Even though they try to hide things on YouTube, there's ways you can get them. You can still, if you know what you're looking for, you can get it. You know. Mm-hmm. So I think I really don't think it's going to work. Like I said, who watches Fox News anymore? Like I said, people. I think their average age is like 70-something. Okay, same thing with CNN. Same thing with MSNBC. They're not going to. You know, I know people that age go out and vote, but still, it's not going to be enough. If Tulsi can get enough independent together, I think she can do it. I really do. And I think all these attacks on her are going to they've already backfired on her. I'm telling you, Mike, if she does it right, if she does things right, she has to be well organized for one thing. She has to be able to get the money she needs, and she should be able to get it on a net from small contributions from people like you, me, and others. You know, and I think she can do it. I really do. And like I said, I'm not 100% with her and everything. I'm one of the biggest Second Amendment supporters there is. I believe in constitutional carry. I'm against abortion, and certainly against late-term abortion. But I don't think Tulsi's for late-term abortion either, if I'm not mistaken. You know?
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, you know, as far as wanting that, I wish we could have national health insurance if it was put together properly, not by the idiots in Congress, by people who know what they're doing. But we'd also need the money for it. The only way you're going to get the money for it is to cut that defense budget radically, like in half or even more than that. You know, take the money out of the military industrial complex and give it to people in this country. Simple.
Yeah, or even to stop all the free stuff to the illegal immigrants.
Exactly.
We were talking yesterday about, we're talking over $1 trillion that is going to be spent on all these illegal immigrants who are being allowed into the country, and most of them do not qualify for asylum.
And she also said she's from strong borders, and she said a country without a border is not a country. Okay, so I mean, even in that, I mean, you can't ask for much more. I'll tell you, Mike, we really can't ask for much more. People got to unite behind her. It's got to be, real, true populists. If you're going to be an ideologue of the left or the right, I guess you're not going to be able to. If you're a stooge of the military-industrial complex, or you believe what the garbage that the cable stations tell you, like whether it's the fake news network, the crap news network, or the nothing but crap news network, okay, you're going to be, you're probably not going to want to vote for her. But if you're somebody,
I want to see Tulsi get ahead. Right now, of all the Democrats aiming at 2020, she is my favorite. But because of her anti-war stance, she's going to have a lot of opposition from inside that military-industrial complex. They're going to find some way to derail it. That's the way they operate.
They're going to try. They weren't able to do it to Trump.
True.
I don't think they'll be able to do it to her. Okay, and by the way, I think she's a lot smarter than Trump, too, if you watch her speak. She knows what she's talking about. On top of that, she's a veteran herself. She was over this. She was a medic over this. She saw the horror that these stupid wars bring. Okay, she was over there twice in Iraq.
Yes.
So she's got that going for her, too. And when they give her the nonsense about she met with Assad, and Assad's a brutal dictator. Assad's not a brutal dictator at all. I don't even think he's a dictator.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
he won his elections, too.
Exactly. Just like they're trying to say Maduro now is all kinds of bad things, Well,
that's part of the propaganda of trying to sell the American people on another war. And from what I can tell around here, at any rate, people don't want any more wars. They want it all to stop. They're concerned about, all of our dead and wounded. They're concerned about all the other people in these countries who are being killed and crippled by U.S. military action. They're concerned about escalation to war with Russia and China, which certainly would put Oahu in the crosshairs of an attack. And
it's all in the crosshairs.
I think Americans are war weary, and I think that was one of the reasons Trump was able to overcome all the resources used against him, because he was pushing that anti-war message. Didn't stick with it, obviously. I mean, he's talking about pulling out of Syria, but now he's waffling on that, saying that, well, we have to stay to protect Israel, and we don't know what's going to happen with Afghanistan now, and now they're getting ready to go into Venezuela.
See, that's why I say she's a lot smarter than Trump. She wouldn't let that happen to her. First of all, you think Tulsi Gabbard, if she was president, would put a guy like Bolton as their national security advisor, or a bum or fat slob like what's his name, Pompeo, as their Secretary of State? No way, no way. I don't think she would stand up to the military-industrial complex the way it should be stood up to. I really would. I mean, I look at this woman. This woman shows me strength. Okay, she really shows. She looks like a very serious person. She likes she has to have fun, like she likes to surf and stuff like that. But she also looks like a very serious person at the same time, a very committed person. Okay, she's not a joke. She will not. I really believe she will win. That anti-war stuff will get her the nomination. People are tired of this stuff, Mike. Tired of it. I know I'm tired.
I certainly hope you're right. I certainly hope you're right, and I support Tulsi Gabbard, but she's a long shot.
I know you do.
Yeah, she's a long shot.
Right now she is, but Trump was a long. You know, I predicted. Believe it or not, it doesn't mean anything. Who am I? You know, I don't have my own show or nothing like that. But I told people the minute Trump gave his first speech when he came down the staircase there, I said, "There's your next president of the United States." Those are the things he said: anti-globalist, get out of these trade agreements, withdraw our troops and stuff like that, and close those borders. I knew right away he was going to be the next president. I was right. Okay, he won the nomination and everything else. Now I see the same thing with her. And this time I have even more hope because I think she's a lot brighter than Trump. Okay? And she has experience too. I'm not talking about as a congresswoman. I'm talking about she was over there in Iraq. She's seen what damage that was done.
Yes.
As a medic, she really saw it because, you know, that's when they bring people into these units, when they first, she was a combat medic, so she's right up front with it. So she sees the real serious wounds and everything else.
Yes.
When he's brought back into the camp. Okay, I don't know if she went out. I don't think she went out at infantry patrols. I don't think we're allowed to do it. At least we're allowed to do it at the time. But she was right here.
Mark, I got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with more phone calls. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones. Chris in, I think that's Indiana. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thanks for taking my call. How are you today?
You're in Idaho. My mistake. My bad. I'm doing fine. How are you?
That's okay. I wasn't even going to correct you. It doesn't matter, you know. But I'm doing well, thank you. Just tuning in. This is my first time ever checking you out here. I came across your show. You got a sword up behind you just before I get into it. Is that a sword on the wall? I'm a big sword guy.
It's a souvenir from my days in the film business. It's the big sword from Conan the Barbarian, the Schwarzenegger version.
Wow, is it the actual sword?
No, it isn't. Those were very carefully, held on to, but recently they authorized a licensed reproduction, so I got one for me because I'd actually worked on the original swords on the film.
Oh, that's cool, man.
We all felt
cheated.
Is that sharp? It's razor sharp.
That sword sharp?
Yep.
Oh boy, oh boy. Is there any way, and this would be this is for me here, but any way you could pull that close to the screen so I could get a look at that bad boy?
Not really. We're here to talk politics and everything. I mean, you can see photos of what the sword is supposed to look like with a web search, and getting over there with all the wires, and it is 8 pounds. So.
Oh, that's cool. That's very cool. I have a friend named Jim Lockwood who used to do a radio show, and he had his swords up behind him, and it was really kind of cool to see that. And then I thought, I'm never going to get to watch another radio show with the swords, but now here we are, and I'm excited about that. Anyways, I should get to my question.
Yes, you should.
My question, I guess, is what really happened?
With regard to what?
I mean, that's the name of the show, right? So I'm just curious what really happened.
Well, that's what we talk about every day. That's what we post on the website every day, is we're trying to find out the facts of what's really going on and get it out there into the public so that people can listen, they can read, and they can make up their own minds instead of having corporate media say, this is what you will believe today.
I understand. But how are we supposed to make up our own minds if you won't even show the sword up close?
Well, really, it would be inappropriate to do, and I don't want to take time away from the rest of the show and the other callers. So, according to our call screener, you wanted to talk about Pelosi?
Lock gang, Lock gang's back, baby. Lock gang's back, baby. Woo!
Okay. We're going to let you go here. Thank you for the phone call, and we're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles, and I'm going to have to take you through the station break.
What was that?
I don't know. I think he dries his hair in the microwave oven.
Mike, it's pretty simple. Of course, it's heinous that this Senate Bill 1 passed.
Yes.
Trump will sign it. I'll hold. I hear the music.
Yeah, okay. We'll be right back with hour number 2 and Peter in Los Angeles. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Peter in Los Angeles, and Peter, just sort of pick up where you left off.
Well, I'd like to hear your take on this, but in my assessment, Senate Bill 1 will pass, and Trump will sign it. Do you believe
I'm afraid that you're right. I'm afraid that you're right. I mean, Trump is totally pro-Israel. He's got no sympathy whatsoever from the Palestinians. We're hearing that this deal of the century that's about to be unveiled is just totally one-sided. That Trump doesn't see why any concerns ought to be given to the Palestinians' needs and wants. He's basically, I think the goal is to literally starve the Palestinians into accepting this agreement, which, among other things, requires them to surrender their right of return, which was guaranteed to them both by the United Nations and even by Israel itself when it was first created. And that's what they've been clinging to for all these years. They have a right, recognized right, to return to their homes and villages. Israel wants to take that away, and I think Trump is going to help him do it.
You know, Mike, that's my personal litmus test for the Palestinian cause, is that because there's a lot of the opposition, is controlled. And, if I were a Palestinian, I wouldn't want a bunch of Jewish people creating the narrative for, their struggle. But, there was quite a few of them. And some of them, a lot of them I'm a member of. Jewish Voice for Peace, the Pink, whatever they are. Pink, you know what I'm talking about.
The ladies group.
Yeah, and they do good work, but the litmus test is, and very few of them ever say it, is what do they think about the right of return? Now they're for liberalizing and ending some of the brutality, but a lot of them totally avoid that, and they won't even get into the fact of a right of return, which is the core of it, in my opinion.
Yes.
But Mike, I wanted to ask you also about this David Duke thing. And I'm not even sure if David Duke is aware how toxic that he is. Maybe he is. I have a feeling this was like what you say. This is a calculated way to besmirch Tulsi Gabbard.
I think so, and I have to wonder who put him up to it, or maybe somebody hacked his Twitter account. And he isn't even aware that it's happened yet. But I really do think this was the first of many attacks on Tulsi Gabbard as a candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that drives people nuts about the opposition to Tulsi Gabbard is that she met with Assad.
Yes.
And it's the neocons who are really against her, and it makes it very hard for them to attack her. The fact that she's an Iraq veteran and a major in the whatever service she was in. I know she was a major.
Yes.
But I want to point out one more thing to the audience here. David Duke is being vilified and all that stuff, and there's a lot of stuff. My wife is black, my child is mixed, so there's a lot of things that I don't agree with David Duke about, but it didn't seem to matter when Robert Byrd of West Virginia, Democratic Senator Robert Byrd, who was I think a grand dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, and rose to great heights of seniority in the Democratic Party. And by the way, Hillary Clinton declared him her mentor.
Yes.
And you gave the eulogy at his funeral. And this guy was the goddamn grand dragon of the Ku Klux Klan. But nobody brings that up. And the fact that there was Hillary eulogizing him and saying what a great American he was. But you know, David Duke is vilified, and Tulsi Gabbard is going to have to bear the baggage of something she didn't even look to get from David Duke.
Well, I think this is going to blow over very quickly because she did the right thing. She immediately turned him down and said, "I reject your endorsement." And that was the smart move for her to make.
Yeah, I like Gabbard. I wish she were pro Second Amendment. I definitely agree with Mark on that. But I'm going to vote for it. Jesus, but you never know what you're going to get. I mean, look what we got with Trump, and he's everything that we didn't think that he was.
That's true, and I'm not sure I'm ready to go through another disappointment here. But again, if I'd like to see Tulsi get ahead, and of course we're a long way away from primary season. It's right now she's in the fundraising part of her campaign, trying to raise the money to make a run. Anyway, Peter, we're going to let you go. We're going to switch over to Danielle in Louisiana. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, good afternoon, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Good, thank you. So I'm from Louisiana, and I'm, just a mom. I don't follow politics much, but I have following the David Duke Twitter feed lately because everyone seems to talk about him. And it seems like he's only interested in Tulsi Gabbard because she's against party's wars for Israel. And not that he agrees with her gun control or her open borders policy, but I can get behind that. And I don't think that he's very bad for her because, after all, he came out for Trump, and Trump won.
Well, again, I think it was a deliberate effort by somebody to tarnish Tulsi Gabbard and basically derail her campaign right from the starting gate. So, Danielle, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. The phone lines.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
Have a good evening. And we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Pardon me. And again, phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to Venezuela. And here comes the payoff. Juan Guaido will open up Venezuelan oil to foreign companies. And basically, it just underscores that this was really always about the oil. Now, Venezuela, under Maduro, under Hugo Chavez, oil was a national asset. The country and the people owned the oil. And U.S. oil companies were just lusting for it. And now it looks like it's in the offing, and Guaido is already acting like he's in charge. But Guaido's representative in Washington, Carlos Vecchio, told Bloomberg that the opposition leader wanted to increase oil production and scrap current requirements that state-owned oil giant PDVSA must keep a controlling stake in joint ventures. Currently, PDVSA must maintain a 51% stake in joint projects. They want to take that away. So the U.S. companies, or the foreign companies, would be in control. So it's about the oil, it's about the oil money, about what money the oil is sold for. It's about literally stripping the wealth of yet another nation to enrich the West. Okay. Now, a little bit of an interesting development, and it may indicate the way this intervention is going to go. Apparently, Venezuelan authorities found a cache of weapons delivered from the United States. They were discovered at the storage yard of Arturo Michelena International Airport in the Venezuelan city of Valencia. The stash included at least 19 rifles and 118 magazines, high-caliber ammunition, as well as 90 radios, 6 mobile phones, and was most likely sent from Miami. And they're trying to find out with the intended recipient of the shipment who that was going to be. Now, obviously, that's not enough weapons to mount a full-on front-to-front war. So it looks like they're trying the Syria gambit. They're going to find opposition groups and arm them and let them take down Maduro for the United States. Remember that botched assassination attempt with the drones a while back? Anyway. Venezuelan opposition lawmaker Henry Ramos Alep basically said earlier today that the National Assembly is under threat of an armed takeover by Venezuela's government forces. I think this is most likely Bex, but he's claiming that in the past, the Venezuelan armed forces had repeatedly invaded what he describes as the territory of the legislative authority, claiming that they shot and even seriously injured several deputies. There's no confirmation of that. Meanwhile, Venezuela is starting to redirect oil exports intended for the U.S. to Europe and Asian markets. And Maduro basically came on out and said, we're facing these new illegal sanctions from the U.S. We were exporting about 500,000 barrels per day to the United States. They're now going to be redirected to other customers in Europe and Asia because Washington's sanctions apply only to U.S. entities, while Washington clearly does not agree with that. All right, let's take a phone call here. Charles in St. Petersburg, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. The people were saying that Duke and Dave Duke endorsed Tulsi Gabbard. He said just what the woman, the caller from Louisiana, said, that she was for open borders and was a gun grabber and didn't totally endorse her, just endorsing her on the Palestine,
Well, he basically tweeted on out and said, we're finally going to have a presidential candidate who really is truly for the people. And that was the one that Tulsi responded to. And
okay. Well, I heard him on the radio. I thought that's what he said. You're
okay, well, if he was on the radio, then, he may have thought he was helping her. And, he may have thought that because his KKK days are so long ago, they would have been forgotten. Right. But in our current political climate, everybody is digging back decades to find pictures of people in blackface or some other little nonsensical thing that can be used as a weapon.
Right, that's true. But, that's what I would say about Tulsi Gabbard myself. She's a gun grabber and with wide open borders. So, I couldn't endorse. Not that I could endorse anybody, but.
Well,
have you ever thought of having Gilad Atzmon on, the Israeli dissident?
He's like been on the show. He's been on the show a couple of times.
He has been. Yeah, it's good. He's very interesting what he says. I didn't mean to get off the subject. But.
Okay. Okay. I'm concerned about Tulsi's views on gun grabbing. I don't know how open border she is. She may be coming from the perspective that Hawaii is an example of how people from many different races and religions can live together and get along just fine, as long as you don't have political opportunists out there trying to flog up the hate.
Well, doesn't the Democratic Party in Hawaii, isn't it completely controlled by Japanese? I had a friend of mine that grew up in Hawaii, and he said the Chinese have been completely driven out by the Japanese. Not that I don't like Japanese people. I admire their culture. But in the Democratic Party in Hawaii is just a vehicle for Japanese
I'm going to have to say I don't actually know. I mean, there are some political rivalries, between various groups like the Chinese and the Japanese and so forth. But it's handled in a very civilized manner. So I imagine that.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
I imagine that just by going to the Democratic Party of Hawaii's website and looking at the list of names of people who are like on the board of directors, you might get an accurate picture of what's going on.
Yeah, but it used to be, I understand that the Chinese were some of the big businessmen were rivals to the Japanese, and they openly didn't like each other. You would go.
Well, there's been a
Chinese
historical animosity, pretty much all along, just like there is in China and Japan today. And the same thing, with the Koreans. They came in with this historical animosity. But over time, it has reduced, so it can be made to work.
Right.
Anyway, Charles, thanks an awful lot for the phone call.
Okay, well, thank you.
We're going to let you go. Getting on back to the news of Venezuela. Apparently, Max Blumenthal went to Capitol Hill with a camera in tow and interviewed people about this U.S.-led regime change effort in Venezuela. And as he found out both with Libya, Syria, and Ukraine before, the greater the hawkishness, the greater the ignorance. In other words, the more that people knew about these countries and what was going on, the less war-like they were. And the people who are just totally for war, they don't care. They're not finding out what's going on. They think war is the solution to whatever they think is wrong. So Blumenthal confronted congressional members who admitted to U.S. meddling in the Latin American country, but described it as good meddling. And that's the new term of craft. Yes, it's meddling. We're meddling, but it's good meddling. Our meddling is good. Russian meddling is bad. If you believe that, when I have some of Saddam's nuclear weapons to sell you. Over in Afghanistan, actually it's up in Moscow, Taliban and Afghan delegates are negotiating an end to the 18-year-old war. The talks in Moscow were boycotted by the U.S.-backed government in Kabul. President Ashraf Ghani is boycotting the tasks because apparently he's rejected the Taliban's key condition for peace, which is that all foreign troops have to leave Afghanistan. So he's serving his U.S. masters there as well. Okay, now here is an interesting thing. We have been hearing on the corporate media that Trump says U.S. forces are going to leave Syria. But apparently the Pentagon is still sending forces in. They sent in additional troops, they said, to help guide the existing troops out, which I'm not buying. They all have GPS and compasses. And apparently large amounts of weapons are being sent on in. Now we're getting another report. This one is coming from Press TV that members of the Jabhat Fatah al-Sham Takfiri terrorist group, formerly known as al-Nusra, have moved barrels with banned chlorine to a town in Syria's militant-held northwest province of Idlib, using vehicles of the so-called White Helmets Civil Defense Group. Apparently they have 2 of these containers and they were using ambulances. And it looks like they're getting prepared for a false flag chemical weapon attack to blame on Abbas. This dovetails with an announcement that Trump just made on TV that next week there'll be a major announcement regarding the fight with ISIS. So the stage is set for ISIS to carry out this horrendous chemical weapon attack. And then the Pentagon gets to grab all that money from you and send all those kids and equipment back into Syria. And they're going pretty much everywhere right now. Apparently, the U.S. Has been having military drills in Greece. And Washington and Athens last year agreed to deploy U.S. drones to the Larissa Air Force Base in Greece. The Allies are currently considering deploying U.S. F-35 fighter jets to a base in the Greek city of Volos. And clearly, the United States is expanding its military presence in Greece. Well, I think Greece ought to remember what happened the last time they allowed a foreign military to get a foothold in their country. And it didn't work out all that well. Meanwhile, apparently large barges with American tanks were floating down the Rhine River en route to Eastern Europe as part of Operation Atlantic Resolve. This is a NATO push to force Russia into submission. Moscow shows no signs of being worried. So it's getting very, very serious over there. This could wind up easily in a shooting war. I don't see Russia just capitulating and saying, yes, we'll use the dollar, and yes, we'll discount the vodka, and yes, so forth and so on. All right, got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And over in Great Britain, the home where the Skripals lived, or at least Sergei did, is going to be partially demolished and rebuilt, supposedly as part of decontamination, or maybe there's some evidence there that cannot be allowed to be seen because this whole story's just been incredibly flaky. And we've caught the media lying so many times about the timeline, the chain of events. But according to Russia Insider, there's evidence mounting that Sergei may have accidentally poisoned himself. Now, it's kind of hard to know what's going on, but Yulia and Sergei fell ill in the middle of town. They did not go back to the house, so they couldn't touch the door knob, which is where we're told the Novichok was applied. So, again, there's so many holes in that story. Okay, let's get some more news here. Okay, France has fired a nuclear-capable test missile in a rare show, while Russia and the U.S. feud over the INF treaty. And they launched this from a fighter jet. And notice nobody in the media is making a big stink about, oh my goodness, they've got nuclear-capable missiles like North Korea. We've got to do something about it. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Joe in Tennessee, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I watched the State of the Union last night, and I thought Trump would just knocked it out of the park. I mean, he's never going to get the lefties to vote for him, but as far as the appealing to independence, I think he did wonderfully. He's showing that it's the Democrats that are the radicals of bringing up socialism and infanticide was wonderful. I've never seen a president bring up abortion like that at a State of the Union speech. And I'm delighted because I never really thought, I thought Trump was just doing lip service to the life community. But he's really been a very strong advocate of the pro-life position. And to me, it's one of the best surprises of Trump. Because I thought, well, he's a New York billionaire. He's just saying that to get votes from the evangelicals. But he's really going to bat for the pro-life people. A lot more than the Bushes did, and even more than Reagan did. So yes. I was really pleased by that. The other thing I noticed was Pence. I was watching Pence, and he stood up for every applause line except for two. And the two that he didn't stand up for was getting out of Syria and getting out of Afghanistan. And I thought it was really interesting because, he's a big butt kisser, and he's a sycophant. And to see that was telling me that as big of a sycophant that he is, he's more of a sycophant to the military-industrial complex than he is to his own president. And it was alarming. I noticed the second time, because I was watching, I go, I bet you he doesn't stand up. And the second time they did it, it was more of a panned-out view of it. So you see that he didn't get up, but it was like, whoever was operating the camera I thought did a very good job. But at certain, I wish he would have went more in on that one because it was very obvious that Trump, like I said, every applause line in the whole speech, Pence was the first one up, but not those two. Mm-hmm. So. That tells you where his loyalties are, and Trump better watch his back as far as Pence, but I think we all know that. But the other thing, this whole women wearing white, I mean, that was the most ridiculous thing. I spent a lot of time going to Thailand, and a lot of times, like the bar girls there, they'll have a theme night. They'll all wear white, or they'll all wear blue, or they'll all wear green, and it just reminded me of that. But what was interesting to me was Sheila Jackson Lee was there, and she's wearing the white. And here's a woman that one of her interns came to her about being raped by a staffer,
Yes.
and she fired her. I mean,
Yeah.
This is the same woman that was giving notes to the Blasey Ford's lawyers during the Kavanaugh hearings, and here she is. It's just the Democrats are such a party of hypocrites. And they have no shame. I mean, you'd think somebody would tell her, like, just go away, don't be seen on the camera. But I guess they figure people don't have any recollection or memory. It's like these guys in Virginia. Where do they get these people from? I mean, I'm not like a kind of guy that's like hard on people as having fun, but who really, I mean, and I grew up in the same era as these guys. None of my friends put on blackface. I mean, what is the urge to put on blackface with these people? I mean, whether it's overreacting or not, I just don't understand. Like, college
30 to 40 years ago, it wasn't considered objectionable if it was just part of a disguise. I mean, that was back when Song of the South was still seen in the movie theaters. That's now been banned. But whether or not you agree with the wearing of blackface or not, my point is we've reached a stage where people are digging into everybody's past 30, 40, 50 years ago, trying to find anything that can be used as a weapon. And I think it's ridiculous. Can we stay in the present and deal with the present problems? That's what I want to do. Anyway, Joe, got to let you go. Got to take another break for commercials. Back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to go back to the phones to Dee in Ohio. Aloha, Dee. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I forgot my question. Now, I know I sound mentally handicapped. That's because I was in a wreck and I had a stroke. Well, and then I laid in a coma 5 months.
Ouch.
Yeah. And it killed my son, my cousin. I was the only one that lived.
I am really sorry to hear that. That is a very sad story.
Well, what I wanted to ask, I think, is what are we going to do about all this?
Well, you mean all the government corruption and everything?
Yeah.
I think that the U.S. government is heading toward a Soviet Union-style collapse, and we just need to wait it on out and be prepared to rebuild our country the way we want it to be, on the other side. And the example I like to use is the former Soviet Union versus the modern Russian republics.
Well,
it sounds to me like you've got a delay on the speaker there. Anyway, Dee, please feel better. Feel better. I hope you get well.
Well,
and
I feel good as it is.
Oh, okay, well, good. Just get better, and thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to John in Austin. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just got home a few minutes ago, and I just caught you talking about the Skripals.
Mm-hmm. Well, basically, the gist is that a portion of the home is going to be demolished and rebuilt, supposedly for decontamination.
Yeah. Now, I know I've heard you a couple of times on Richie Allen's show. Now, if you go to Richie Allen's YouTube channel and look for Tuesday, January the 22nd of this year,
yep,
he's got a great story about the Skripals case. I don't want to start telling you it bit by bit because I couldn't do as good a job. You'd enjoy it much more listening to him talking about it. It's a fantastic story.
Okay, what was the date of that show?
Tuesday, January the 22nd.
All righty. I will definitely take a look at it later today.
Okay. Cheers, man.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. The phone lines are now empty. Getting on back to France. As part of his effort to placate the yellow vests, Macron is allowing the first referendum in 14 years to be held, probably in May. But he is not going to put the question of resignation up for the French referendum. Now, one of the questions the French would be asked is whether they want to reduce the number of national lawmakers. This is a campaign pledged by Macron, as well as whether they favor imposing term limits on legislators. So the Yellow Vest protest did have an effect. They didn't get everything that they wanted, but they did bring about change. And they did so, for the most part, without a lot of violence. Okay, here's your daily Booga Booga. This is out of Russia Today, and it's asking, is Russia planning to invade Sweden, or is British media spreading more baseless hysteria? And I come down on the side of the baseless hysteria. But the article is saying that 2 of Britain's leading newspapers are running these delirious headlines, warning of a potential Russian assault on neutral Sweden. The Telegraph came on out saying Sweden's first new conscripts prepare to repel Russian invaders. And then the Daily Mail said first Swedish conscripts in a decade begin training to defeat a Russian invasion. Sounds scary, doesn't it? Actually sounds rather coordinated. So what's really going on here? Okay, well, it may be to try and scare Sweden into finally merging with NATO, because Sweden is neutral. They don't belong to NATO. They didn't belong to the Warsaw Pact. But there is definitely a lot of people inside NATO who would like to drag Sweden in. And this may be part of the propaganda campaign to get Sweden to go along with that here. Over in Russia, and I'm not sure what this portends, but apparently there have been numerous evacuations in the Moscow area triggered by anonymous bomb threats. No actual bombs yet, but they just got this massive wave of these anonymous bomb threats by telephone and email. And to err on the side of caution, buildings were being emptied. So is this part of an early destabilization campaign against Putin? I don't know here. Okay. CNN actually did their job, and they came out with a report late Monday in which they confirmed that the Saudis have sold or freely given American weapons to Al-Qaeda fighters and other militia groups that have helped create the world's worst humanitarian crisis. This is in Yemen. The U.S. is sending the Saudis weapons. The Saudis are giving them to Al-Qaeda and hardline Salafi militias and other factions waging war. And the guns basically have become a form of currency to buy the loyalties of militias or tribes. So it's another reason for the United States to quit this relationship with Saudi Arabia, because after whatever happens in Yemen is over, one way or the other, those Al-Qaeda people are still going to be there with those U.S. weapons. And we've seen this in U.S. foreign policy so many times, where they'll do something to solve an immediate problem, and they don't realize, they don't think about how is this going to play out down the road? What will be the blowback? And here we're seeing the blowback start. Al-Qaeda getting these U.S.-made weapons here. Now, Mike Pompeo is out there announcing that several countries will be part of an alliance against Iran. And he made the announcement, well, actually today, that several Middle East countries would soon announce plans to take part in a NATO-type alliance to counter Iran. He said that the negotiations regarding the matter are continuing to advance, and added that participants will develop an outline that is not reactive. Pompeo said, we'll develop a strategic framework which will keep the Middle East more stable in the years to come. I know how to make the Middle East stable. Stop mucking about with people's countries. That's where all the instability is coming from. It's ridiculous. Okay, down in Israel, they're coming up on their elections, and the polls are showing a rather surprise that the Jewish left is in decline. And basically, the Zionist left parties have all but disappeared. And what set it off was the arrival of General Benny Gantz, also known as the Butcher of Gaza, at the head of a new party. Now, Gantz is actually campaigning on the carnage he inflicted on Gaza in the 2014 massacre known as Protective Edge. And he's running under two slogans, Israel before everything and neither left nor right. So he's trying to be a centrist, and apparently he is shot to over 20 seats in the polls, and right now is just slightly ahead of Netanyahu to be the next prime minister, which will not be a good thing for the Palestinians. Now, remember last week we were reporting on how the United Nations had called on Israel to roll back on these attacks on Palestinian schools, which were called educational interference, where the Israelis will stop teachers at checkpoints. They'll basically go into the schools. They'll sometimes shoot into the schools. And, of course, it makes a calm learning environment all but impossible, which appears to be the objective. Well, proving that Israel does not listen to the United Nations, according to this story in Electronic Intifada, Israel has now stepped up the attacks on Palestinian schools. And apparently, Israeli occupation forces last week shot 3 secondary school students, critically injuring 2 of them. They're just shooting them. It's not like these secondary schools represented a threat. Israeli settlers have vandalized a mosque with Hebrew language graffiti. This happened on Monday. This happened in the occupied West Bank village of Deir Dibwan near Ramallah. Settlers also poured flammable material on the shoe rack placed at the entrance of the mosque. And among the slogans that were written on the mosque, here they incite to murder Jews and the Jewish nation lives. Can't we all just get along here? All right, as we mentioned earlier in the show, Senate Bill 1 was finally voted through. It passed 77 to 23, which means a lot of arms got twisted. And it contains the Combating BDS Act, along with more money and military support for Israel. And the Combating BDS Act encourages states to pass laws that authorize economic punishments against those who support the boycott of Israel. Now, this is primarily aimed at businesses, and the way it works is very simple. If you refuse to sign a loyalty oath to Israel, you cannot get a state contract. It's economic blackmail. And it means that the people of those states, as I mentioned before, may not be getting the best value for their tax dollars, because only the companies that are loyal to Israel are taking part in the bidding. So the Senate just passed a bill that effectively tramples on the First Amendment. The House should refuse to take it up, but I'm pretty sure that they will. Now, the ACLU is leading opposition to the bill, and I have a feeling the ACLU might be the body that will take it to the Supreme Court. And this is very, very dangerous. If they carve out an Israel exception to the First Amendment, then next it'll be vaccines and GMO and who knows what else. We're going to take a phone call. James in Tokyo, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hawaii, Michael. Hawaii. We're the place where you and Claire are living your glorious lives in the older age. My boy just went to Hawaii.
Yes.
For 10 days in Honolulu and Waikiki, and he loved it. I don't know why you want to go to Ohio.
Well, we've lived here long enough where we've seen everything. it's a small place, and we've already been to Sea Life Park, and we've already been to the Waikiki Aquarium, and we've already been to all the hotels. And the other reason, of course, is if we are really getting to a point of risking a war against Russia and China, this island's going to be a target. Now, the reason we're talking about going to some place like Indiana or New England is because we have family there, which we don't have here. I mean, we FaceTime with them, all the time. But we'd like to be close to some of the families and watch, the nieces and nephews grow up.
Well, I understand, yeah, for sure that you want to be close to family.
Yeah, plus,
that's
this
the
place
reason
is
I've been in
expensive.
Tokyo.
Even with the
Well, I've been in
combine
Tokyo.
discount, it's expensive here.
Yeah, I've been in Tokyo for so long because just to be near my family, my two boys. But my son went to Honolulu and Waikiki, and he's like, "Man, Dad, this is like an amazing place." And he's showing me pictures and this and that, and he's like, "But I don't think this is the real America where I am." He's just there for like modeling job for like 10 days, and but he's like, "Yeah, it's just too nice, too beautiful, and too expensive." And I was just like thinking of you, and but
Yeah.
unfortunately he's not really into your stuff, like the alternative media like I am, and he doesn't consider you like an idol like I do, and so I didn't hook you two guys up. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you that he had a really great impression of where you are, and that's all.
Well,
And you take care.
I'm glad he did. I'm glad he was happy. I'm glad he had a really good time. You need to understand that all of Hawaii does not look like Waikiki and Honolulu. On this island, take a drive up the leeward side. It's very third world over there. The roads are seriously deteriorated. We don't actually live in either Honolulu or Waikiki. We're a little bit further west of that. We live right by the edge of Pearl Harbor. Anyway, James, I'm going to let you go, and let's switch over to Robert in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, aloha, Mike. How are you?
Fine.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm sure you get that question so much. I'm sorry. It's just the way I usually start a conversation.
It's
I hope
automatic.
Claire is doing well.
Claire is doing better.
Well,
Claire is doing better.
Yeah, you haven't mentioned her much just lately, so I figured she was up and around. I'm glad that last medical thing went well. I'm kind of surprised they just couldn't find anything. That was interesting.
Well, they've ordered another MRI to just double check that whatever was there really, really is gone. But right now it's really about pain management, and Claire not trying to do housework or anything like that. But she is doing a lot better.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. That wasn't the purpose of my phone call, but I was kind of curious. I just, I care about you guys. I don't consider you an idol, Mike, but you are kind of a mentor to me. And I hate to be a bad Rivero Ranger, but I missed the first hour today. I was trying to hurry up and get home from work. And I don't know whether you guys discussed or not this yellow vest thing over there in France, but it's been getting a little weird. What are they on? They're going towards their 13th week, aren't they now?
Yeah, I think they are. And they're getting concessions from Macron. They're going to have a referendum in May, the first French referendum in 14 years. And there are going to be some serious things on there, like reducing the number of lawmakers. So, yeah, they actually succeeded in getting some
That's exactly
changes.
why I was... Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. That's exactly why I was bringing it up. They're finally getting some concessions. The hard part for me to soak in, and especially being stuck out here in California, and Mike, I'm not from California, I just happen to be here, and the more I look at things, the more you have music coming. Do you want to hold me over, or do you want me to go?
I'm going to hold you over. Stay on the line. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Robert in California, and Robert, can you just sort of pick up where you left off?
Sure, yeah. I'm glad there was a break. It kind of let me have a minute to wrap my head around this whole thing. So let me just get it all out in one piece. I'm looking at the yellow vest thing over in France.
Yes.
I don't want to call it a thing. Let's not belittle it. But, I'm looking at the movement over there, and I'm reflecting on the parallels here in America. We're looking at a lot of the same political problems, but I don't see anybody over here doing anything about it.
Well, that's because the corporate media. That's because the corporate media isn't showing it. There have been yellow vest protests here in the United States of America, about 25 of them so far. But the corporate media is not going to report it because they don't want the slaves to get uppity ideas.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right, Mike. I've been keeping up on it. Now, I've seen some of the yellow vest things going on here in our country, but the thing that really confuses me is why we've got such cognitive dissonance going on in this country. I mean, there are so many people right now so willing to be distracted that they're not watching this freight train coming at them, and it kind of scares me.
Well, that may be part of the problem. They're seeing an epic disaster on its way, and there's nothing they can do about it, and so it's off to the bread and circuses.
Well, yeah, no, I get that. But, the thing that really got me was how that we're going into week 13 with the Yellow Vest protest, and it took literally 3 months before Macron started actually making some acquiescence. And I don't know if the American populace actually has it in them to keep it up for 13 weeks. I do believe at this point with globalism, the way they're putting their claws in all of us, I think that's what it's going to take. And I don't know if we have it.
Well,
I'd like to hope I'm wrong.
I'm seeing more and more of the younger generation who are getting upset and angry about what's going on because they're starting to look at the world that is being prepared for them to live in, and it's not a very pleasant picture. Not to mention, of course, all the wars and the looming possibility of a military draft. Yeah, this military conflict overseas thing, it really gets to me. I was in the Navy, and, Mike, I can tell you one thing for sure. We have no right, we have no reason, we have no legitimate authority to be over there playing puppet in third world countries, killing children for the sake of better oil prices. It's just not right, it's not fair, and it's not appropriate. You don't even need to be a Christian to understand the common sense value of why that's wrong. Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And more people are basically expressing the same sentiment. It's none of our business what's going on in Venezuela. If U.S. oil companies want Venezuelan oil, let them buy it. But unfortunately,
Did you see how much money? Did you see how much money we just spent militarily over in just Afghanistan and Syria last year?
Huge amounts of money, but it was the low cost.
Yeah, it was over $50 billion. I don't remember the exact number, but it was over $50 billion with a B. So okay, well, I'm just saying, I'm going to let you go, but
yeah, we
let's
got to do
reflect
station
on that,
identification.
Folks.
Thanks an awful lot. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And a little bit of breaking news. I'm going to insert it into the middle of the normal talking points. Apparently, the Democrats, now in control of the House of Representatives, are reopening the Russiagate probe, and they're sending Mueller dozens of transcripts. And so here it comes. This is what Donald Trump gets for not cleaning up that election system and getting voter ID passed. The Democrats in the House are out for his hide, or for his scalp, more likely. Alrighty, getting on back to the other international news here. On Monday, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. dismissed a lawsuit against the American Studies Association over its decision to support the boycott of Israeli academic institutions. Now, this ruling is a major blow to efforts by Israel lobby groups to use courts to harass, intimidate, and silence supporters of Palestinian rights at U.S. universities. This is a tactic known as lawfare. So in April of 2016, several current and former members of the ASA filed the lawsuit against the group over its 2013 resolution backing the academic boycott. In his 20-page ruling, U.S. District Judge Rudolph Contreras wrote the plaintiffs had no standing to file a lawsuit seeking damages on behalf of the ASA, and that their individual damage claims came nowhere near the $75,000 minimum required for them to seek relief in federal court. What I'm concerned about is that the judge seems to have skipped over that issue of the First Amendment. Over in Korea, they have set a date for the second North Korea nuclear summer. They're going to meet in Vietnam, not here in Hawaii. The summit is planned for February 27th and 28th. It's going to further refine the agreement that came out of the first summit. But there's still a stopping point. Okay? North Korea wants concessions and sanctions relief, then they'll denuclearize. The U.S. has the opposite position. You denuclearize first, and then maybe we'll do something nice for you. So I'm not hopeful that anything good is going to come out of this. Okay, now a little bit, this could be propaganda. This came out of the Daily Mail in Great Britain. North Korea's nuclear missiles are intact and being shielded at airports, UN panel of experts warns. Immediately, there's a problem with this story. Kim Jong-un, North Korea, had not yet reached the point of being able to mount a nuclear warhead on one of their missiles. So the gist of this is that, how dare those North Koreans not leave their missiles and bombs out there where we can attack them. But then, every country that has a military, they work to protect it. They'll have bunkers. They'll have silos. They'll have revetments. Over in Los Angeles on Monday night, people in Los Angeles got really kind of a shock. There was an urban warfare drill going on with black helicopters and people reporting explosions, and there had been no advance notice given. They just zoomed through all those high-rise canyons of downtown, accompanied by these strange explosions and military maneuvers, and zero explanation from the authorities as to what's going on. And apparently this went on for some hours. Just ramp that fear factor up, I guess, a little bit. Okay, now then, the Navy protects its supercarriers with a system called the Anti-Torpedo Torpedo Defense System. It's composed of two components, the Torpedo Warning System and the Countermeasure Anti-Torpedo System. Now, the TWS includes a towed sensor that trails the ship in order to detect any incoming threats. In the event that it detects a projectile, it will classify it and provide targeting information for CAT, which in turn will use its hard kill interceptor to neutralize the threat. The Navy has been testing this for 5 years, and they're going to drop it because it's unreliable. Yet another high-priced piece of junk, courtesy of the military-industrial complex. Getting into the economy, as you know, the stock market didn't do all that well today. I think they ended slightly down, not horribly down. He said, pushing buttons on his phone. Yeah, just slightly down. But there is a warning that is coming on out that stock volatility will return this month because the money is draining out of markets. And the way that works, it's based on supply and demand. And in this case, the supply are the number of stocks available, which is fairly constant, and the demand is signaled by the available money supply in that market. That can oscillate back and forth. That can just fluctuate wildly. And remember, what we saw happening there in December was a result of money flowing out of the market in October. All right, we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. So another article, this one out of Investment Watch blog. We know that 2018 was the worst December since 1931. What happened after the worst December in 1931? There was a rally, and then there was a big drop. Just something to keep in mind as the stock market continues to gyrate all over the place here. Apparently, banks are buying a lot of gold. So are governments. But central banks haven't bought this much gold since Nixon closed the gold window. So I think they know something is up. There's going to be a bit of a whoopsie. We're still seeing this making of stink face between the United States government and Chinese tech company Huawei. And more people are saying this looks to be part of some kind of an extortion plan. And apparently the real issue is Huawei has the edge in the 5G technology and AI technologies that will be the foundation of the next stage of the market. And they're also accusing Huawei of collusion with Iran to bypass U.S. sanctions. But I think the real issue here is market share. The United States can't compete with these other companies anymore. So they have to knock them down, either politically, legally, or militarily. Okay. Over in Iran, 4 banks have developed a gold-backed cryptocurrency called Paymon. And according to the article, the crypto asset has been developed in cooperation with the Persian Bank, the Bank Pasargad, Bank Milli Iran, and Bank Melat. Iran Farah Bourse, an over-the-counter cryptocurrency exchange, will reportedly list the new cryptocurrency. They're expecting to put 1 billion Paymon tokens to be released initially. So once again, de-dollarization in progress. Kevin Smith, who's CEO of U.S. hedge fund Crescat Capital, is saying Canadian banks could be looking at a major drop. And he's advising his clients they're worthy of a short. They could drop by at least 50%, which would be bad news here. Over in Poland, Polish farmers, several thousand Polish farmers from different regions, held a rally outside the presidential palace in Warsaw, demanding the government resume trade with Russia and limit imports of food products from Western Europe. This was reported by Sputnik News. The farmers demand repayment of various compensations, control over the imports of agricultural products, as well as an increase in purchase prices. They're also angered by the absence of access to the Russian market. And this one farmer said, when the Russian market was open, I was able to buy a new tractor from 3 hectares of potatoes, while now it is impossible. So Europe is starting to strain against all the Russian sanctions. And I predicted this was going to happen. All these sanctions and all these tariffs, it's just pushing the rest of the world away from the United States. And it's only going to get worse. Tesla. Boy, is Tesla just having a hard time of it. First of all, if you remember last week, we were talking about the fact that Tesla Model 3 owners are reporting all kinds of problems caused by the intense cold of this winter, including a drastic shortening of battery life. Now, supposedly, when the world warms up again, they'll get their full range back, but right now it's an issue and they got to be careful of it. Meanwhile, over in Buffalo, a group of former Tesla workers are breaking their silence about problems they witnessed at the plant, including what they termed as a lack of urgency shown by management to improve operations. Former workers described a gloomy picture of the Tesla's Gigafactory 2 plant in Buffalo, formerly known as Solar City. And they said that taxpayer-funded equipment constantly broke down, that resulted in production goals never being met, and a work atmosphere in which some employees spent more time on their cell phones than on the jobs. When one of the former workers raised these concerns with management, he was told that Tesla is trying to build the plane as we're trying to fly it, and that hiccups are part of being a startup. Actually, no. You design the factory first very carefully. And this was something that my father did. Graduated MIT, had an advanced degree from USC, and that was his business, setting up factories for companies. And it was a very long, involved, meticulous process. But you would have your workers go into the factory knowing that when they flipped those switches up, it was all going to work and work properly. All right, we got a caller waiting on the line. Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good day, Michael. Yes, as far as the State of the Union last night, I noticed none of the media, nobody's picking up on. Where was Ruth Bader Ginsburg? I noticed she didn't show up last night.
No, she didn't. A lot of people are starting to wonder if maybe she's actually passed and the Democrats are trying to hide it from Trump so that he can't appoint a new judge.
Yeah. You know, Mike, all those women dressed in those white suits, they look like they were escapees from a mental institution. They look like they were in straitjackets. I mean,
yeah,
they look like
they did.
A mental institution. It really is unbelievable. And I thought his speech was awesome. I really was amazed that Trump brought the family of the two elder people who were murdered 2 weeks ago to the chamber. And I thought that was stunning. And I was wondering, I was looking at Pelosi. I don't think she could even, her face was ready to crack on that one.
Yes.
It was absolutely, because they had the
little too much Botox.
2 granddaughters. Yeah, absolutely. And so I know it's tough for those the Democrats to stomach that on the immigration issue of two elder Americans murdered, and the whole thing was pretty intense, I guess, in some ways. And people still vote for the Democrats, but yeah, Michael, what I really want to talk about is what's this now that the United States is buying technology from Israel for the Iron Dome? You know anything about that?
Well, the United States, basically funded Israel's development of the Iron Dome. And I guess they've decided that the Iron Dome is a better system than the Patriot, and they want to get their hands on it.
Okay. Because I notice, it seems we've given Israel all this money for their wall and their military, but the Schumers and the other schmucks over here, they don't want to defend our borders. They want to flood it with millions of illegals. It's crazy. And then, of course, you know what's going on in California with I think it's typhus. They got typhus running all rampant because of all the homeless.
Yep.
The needles, and that's unbelievable. It was happening here. I know in Anaheim they have a big tent city right outside of Disneyland, which is amazing in itself.
Yeah,
here in South Florida we got a lot of homeless. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's terrible. We got about 8,000 on this island, and it's a small island. It's just a little over 20 miles across its longest point. Right.
Well, that's the last thing I'll say, Michael. You've got some other people calling in probably. Here's one thing that's really bothered me, though, Michael. In the Herald, this paper down here in South Florida, they're talking about all these people from New Jersey and New York are just flooding into Florida, the state of Florida. They're literally fleeing those New York and New Jersey states because of the taxes and everything. So, you know what? I have to say this. I believe by 2022, the state of Florida is going to be blue. It's going to go blue in the election. Absolutely. They got all these liberal freaks coming in here, and they're running away, and now they're going to create the same problem here. Just like what's happening in California.
Yes.
The illegal Mexicans and Central Americans going into those states in Arizona, they're going to turn that place into where they ran away from. Absolutely.
Well, we're headed toward being a one-party nation. You can see the Democrats openly trying to rig the system to just take control of all the elections and make sure that the GOP party is just permanently on the outs.
Well, Michael, that's what they're doing, and they're using the white Anglo women against their white companions. And that's what's happening here, because they think with more emotion. They don't think with their brain. They think with their heart, more likely. And I believe that's what's going to happen. What you're saying, it's going to happen the way you're saying it. It's going to be an overrun of, forget it. No matter what Trump does, he could give them all $1 million, and probably 60, 70, at least 75% of them will vote Democrat. It's amazing to me.
Yeah.
You try to defend. Pelosi's got a wall around her house. He's got a very expensive house. And all these other Obamas and stuff, but they don't want you to have a wall on your border. But they sure want to flood the place. But they don't want those people in their areas.
Yeah,
around their house.
Yeah, it's called being a NIMBY, which means not in my backyard. They want the illegals and the homeless in the inner cities and in other people's neighborhood, but they don't want to have to deal with them themselves.
Right. I think Trump should have really done the state last night. He should have really hit hard on the drug abuse and what's really happening. He hit it a little bit, but he should have really went full bore. And he should have been pointing the fingers at the Democrats for allowing all these people, all this drugs is flowing in here. And he should be pointing the finger at the Democratic Party for the drug flow that's coming in this country, killing thousands of people. It's ridiculous.
Well,
Really is.
I think he went soft in the awareness that there are significant elements of our government that are tied in with the drug trade. And you know, Trump is trying to do his job, but he doesn't want to wind up like John Kennedy. Anyway, Tom, we're going to let you go.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
All right, we're going to let you go here. Getting on back to Tesla. Sandy Munro of Munro and Associates is basically an industry expert. And he was looking at the Tesla, and he says, there is no question that the technology is first rate. It's absolutely first rate. He says the problem is the manufacturing and the quality issues of the vehicles have been all over social media. And so there's a new article in the Detroit News that highlights extraordinary measures Tesla has taken to deal with the poor build of its manufacturing line. Apparently, Tesla was hiring a separate automotive supplier in California to work on paint quality issues for cars coming out of its Fremont factory. They had to call in outside experts to touch up paint jobs on tens of thousands of vehicles before they went to the customers. And that illustrates something I've been saying all along. The United States has forgotten how to manufacture. You know, the people who still remembered how to do that, they were my father's age, and he's no longer with us. And, you know, these new kids coming out of college, they may be great art history majors and up on women's studies and all the rest of it, but we don't seem able to actually build things the way we did when we truly were a great nation. And we better learn, we better get it back. That's why we have, you know, all of a sudden this nonsense with Huawei. The United States government is basically admitting we can't keep up with these other countries that we allowed to take over the technological manufacturing lead. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha America, welcome back to our show here. And if you would like to help out Republic Broadcasting, and they really do need it, the postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during normal business hours, extension 3 at all other times. So we're talking about the economic news here. And this next one comes under the category of do the business and don't get political. Now, you're all familiar with Panera Bread. It's a very successful chain here. But they tried an experiment with a shoot-off called Panera Cares, which was this socialist pay-what-you-want restaurant. And it's going to be closing on February 15th after 9 years, saying the business model is unsustainable. Now, Panera Cares billed itself as a nonprofit restaurant designed to feed low-income people. The business model was anything but. Rather than create a charitable organization that distributes food to needy families, or a discount outlet, or even a $1 menu like every other fast food restaurant, Panera tried to create a socialist system in which meals were offered at a suggested donation price. That means some people would pay more, while others would pay less based on what they feel like or could afford. By not simply offering food at a low price, Panera completely removed any incentive for patrons to meet even the lowest standards of consumer-retailer exchange. The result is some people paid their fair share, while a lot of others enjoyed a free lunch, and apparently students and the homeless just mobbed the place. And that's why socialism doesn't work. Sooner or later, you run out of other people's money here. Apparently, during the State of the Union speech, Democrats got actually upset that Trump would call them socialists. And yet, look how many of them are already out there advocating for socialism, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Another little story. that came through. This one had pictures. Americans across the United States are starting to notice that supermarket shelves are starting to get empty. There seem to be some supply chain problems, or maybe the supermarkets are running out of money. And by the way, prices are really going up here. Boy, did we have sticker shock the other day. And I remember when I was a kid and they were propagandizing us about the Soviet Union, you know, one of the things they would show us were these pictures of these supermarkets with absolutely bare shelves and say, see, the Soviet economy doesn't work. And the Soviet economy had problems. But now ours are the shelves that are getting bare. This is a rather interesting little story. This came out of Technocracy News, basically looking at housing starts. And housing starts are one of the main indicators used by economists to measure the health of the economy, the number of private homes being built around the nation. In 2018, housing starts fell in all 4 regions of the nations, representing the biggest drop since 2016. And a lot of economists are pointing to issues such as higher material costs, but there may be something else going on. Across the nation, city councils and state legislatures are beginning to remove zoning protections for single-family neighborhoods, claiming they are racial discrimination designed to keep certain minorities out of such neighborhoods. And in response to these charges, some government officials are calling for the end of the single-family home in favor of forcing you to live in multiple family apartments. So that's the new thing from the liberals. Single-family housing is racist. It's amazing here. Okay, getting on back to our hordes of migrants heading our way. Apparently, earlier today, the government of Coahuila, Mexico, ordered at least 50 buses to transport a part of the caravan to the U.S. border. They arrived at Piedras Negras, Mexico last night, which is located across from Eagle Pass, Texas. Now, the Pentagon has responded by repositioning 250 troops to Eagle Pass. And I don't think that's going to be anywhere near enough. So, over in Texas, activists are suing to try and stop Texas from investigating the citizenship status of voters. The lawsuit is claiming it's discriminatory and it's arbitrary. Yes, it's discriminatory. We have to discriminate between those who are legally entitled to vote and those who are not. Now, the civil rights group is claiming that the Texas program will disenfranchise naturalized citizens. No, it won't. It's looking for non-citizens. But the Democrats are desperate to keep the illegal immigrants voting in the elections because they always vote Democrat. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, as you know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is very pro-open borders. She's called for the abolition of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And now she's got a little bit of an incident that is reflecting poorly at her. Now, as you know, MS-13 is this gang comprised of immigrants from El Salvador. And apparently in Queens, which is part of Ocasio-Cortez's district, there was a murder on the subway, on the 7-train subway platform. And this guy had been previously arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So why are we allowing these criminals to come in? And I actually got an email saying, well, you know, white people and legal citizens also commit murders too, so it's not a big deal. Yeah, it is. Okay, if you've got 4 legal citizens committing murders, what's the point of expanding it to 8 or 10 or 12? Now, as one of our callers earlier today pointed on in, Los Angeles has suffered an outbreak of typhus. And basically, it's just a huge mess. It's raging through the city. And this is something that you would normally find in poverty-stricken dystopias is the fleas are carrying the disease, the rats are carrying the fleas, and the rat population is doing fine because of all the garbage. It's all over the streets. So Los Angeles is being turned into a third world hole. And that's not the only one. Apparently, there's an outbreak of this life-threatening fungal illness called valley fever, and it's spreading rapidly through central California. And inside this article, there was a map showing exactly where in the United States valley fever is found, and it's centered on that Mexican border. This is a public health nightmare that is taking place because of the open borders, people. Over in the European Union, President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, basically held a press conference talking about, what's wrong with people who are championing Brexit without a plan. We've got to have a plan. And said, I've been wondering what that special place in hell looks like for those who promoted Brexit without even a sketch of a plan how to carry it out safely. Well, the issue is that Brussels doesn't want there to be an actual Brexit, and everything they've suggested for the exit plan, like the Chequers plan, it basically makes it a Brexit in name only. And the British people don't want that. They want out. An Italian member of the European Parliament basically came on out, let's see, Marco Zanni, saying the real fascists are in Brussels. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Jeff in Michigan, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mark. Hey, what's to stop the United States government from defending their borders with deadly force from invaders that are destroying our country?
They're, if it declares to be an invasion, if they're coming across in force, there's absolutely nothing. And of course, the open borders people and the liberals would go crazy and say it's a war crime. How dare you? But something's got to be done. It's going to destroy this country the way it's destroyed the European Union.
I agree. And, I would hope that is what it would be done. And thank you so much, and I'll let you go.
All right, well, thank you very much. And the phone lines are now open. So let's do that. Okay. The Hungarian government is refusing to receive a Dutch parliamentary delegation visiting Budapest to investigate the state of the rule of law in the country. Now, Tamás Minkser, State Secretary for Communication and International Representation, said the Netherlands was not a Hungarian oversight body, and Dutch pro-migration politicians have no right to carry out an investigation in Hungary. He's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. All righty. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of the show. Let's talk about human-caused global warming. And they had a very rare snowfall in the Bay Area on Monday night. And they had snow build up on Mount Diablo, Mount St. Helena, and Mount Hamilton earlier in the day. There was measurable snow dusting trees in the Santa Cruz Mountains. This is very unusual weather for San Francisco. That's the unusual part here. And of course, they're still trying to salvage it, human-caused global warming. NASA has come on out announcing that 2018 was the fourth hottest year on record. And this is coming from Gavin Schmidt, the director at NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies in New York, saying 2018 is yet again an extremely warm year on top of a long-term global warming trend.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark.
Why am I getting sound? Okay. Anyway, all of this is coming from NASA itself and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, both of which have been caught lying before. on this issue of global warming. And of course, you know, those of us who work there say what NASA really means is never a straight answer. But they're still pushing it. They're still out there pushing it because they want those carbon taxes, and they want you to be convinced that only by listening to a global environmental authority tell you how to live your life will you save planet Earth. And this is all coming out of Agenda 30. Up in Oregon, the grab is already on. Governor Kate Brown and lawmakers have begun drafting a large cap and trade carbon tax plan. It's estimated this will cost the Oregon taxpayers $600 million per year. That's $150 per year for each man, woman, and child in Oregon. Okay. Okay. Little bit of a warning. This is coming from Breitbart senior correspondent Alan Bokhari, is saying that big tech censorship efforts are the subject of widespread controversy, especially becoming as obvious as they are. But Alan Bokhari is saying the tech industry isn't acting alone. The liberal establishment media has been pushing for increased censorship of their biggest rivals, and they've been doing a bang-up job. The independent media was once poised to overtake establishment news outlets. Well, some of us already have when you look at how many people are being laid off. In the wake of various fake news scandals, it sadly comes as no surprise that left-wing media outlets are now striking back and trying to silence the opposition. As an overwhelmingly left-wing industry, big tech continues to acquiesce to the outrageous demands of liberals without a second thought, even if it means creating a space where only one set of values and beliefs is allowed to be shared and no diversity of thought is tolerated. That's called dictatorship. Now, the sham of political correctness has reached its peak, and the liberal media knows exactly how to capitalize on PC culture to get their way. Over at Google, they have announced they're going to de-rank Russia Today and Sputnik News articles to make them harder to find. This is coming direct from Eric Schmidt, the executive chairman of Google's parent company, Alphabet. And they say that Google is going to engineer specific algorithms that do nothing but hunt for Russia Today and Sputnik to make their articles less prominent on the search engine's news delivery service. Now, by the way, something a lot of you may not know. You can have Google search a specific location instead of the whole web. After you type in the URL, you type the word site, S-I-T-E, and then the name of the site, like rt.com, no spaces. And Google will pull up everything at Russia Today about that subject. So anyway, Schmidt says we're working on detecting and de-ranking those kinds of sites. Yeah, it's censorship. It's absolute censorship here. By the way, this gets us to a story. This is a flashback story. This came out of QZ.com. Google's true origin partly lies in CIA and NSA research grants for mass surveillance. Remember back when they were talking total information awareness and we're going to spy on everything that you do. In order to track citizens in cyberspace, it was decided, make the people you're tracking do the work. You know, come up with this search engine, which is fun to use, and they'll give you all the information that you could possibly need. So the intelligence community hoped the nation's leading computer scientists could take non-classified information and user data, combine it to what would become known as the Internet, and begin to create for-profit commercial enterprises to suit the needs of both the intelligence community and the public. Well, this is a little bit of a misstatement, okay, because the Internet began back in the 1970s with what's called the Great Revolt, where the U.S. government was funding the ARPANET, and they started getting concerned that ordinary Americans were starting to use it. And so when they came out with the funding for, I think it was 1977, and they said, there are going to be new rules. The ARPANET is confined to government agencies, universities working on government contracts, and military facilities. And the corporations running the background basically said, you can keep your money, we'll take the ARPANET private. And that was when the ARPANET became the internet. And the government's been trying to deal with it ever since here. By the way, speaking of Google, Google now pays more money in European Union fines than it pays in taxes. And they're reporting quarterly revenues up again, largely on the back of increasing market share in online advertising. Wasn't Google caught faking their metrics not too long ago? I seem to remember that one coming back and forth here. Okay, Bernie Sanders is on the warpath. And we've been hearing these stories all along about how a company will acquire rights to a medication that's very inexpensive, and then they'll jack the price up insanely. And Bernie Sanders is on the warpath against Catalyst Pharmaceuticals, basically asking for a justification to charge $375,000 a year for a drug that for many years had been available to patients absolutely free. And the drug is called Firdapse, and it's used to treat Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome, which is a rare neuromuscular disorder. And this disorder affects about 1 in 100,000 people in the United States. Again, it's a money machine. It's no longer about health or medical care. It's about pushing product. And I think we reported just yesterday that they have lowered the standards for high blood pressure so that more people will be prescribed blood pressure medication. Now, I've gotten a lot of emails about this, and it is something that we've known about all the time. As you know, the Earth has two sets of poles. There is the geological pole, the one that really does go up to the North Pole and down to Antarctica. Then there is the magnetic poles. They have a tendency to move around. Normally it's very slowly, and it's presumed it's because of the sloshing of the magma inside the Earth, which generates the magnetic field. But apparently the shifting is now accelerating, and it's moving toward Russia so quickly, scientists have been forced to publish an update on its actual location a year early. Every once in a while, they would come out and say the North Magnetic Pole is latitude, longitude, and those of us with high-end compasses, we would make the little adjustment for the offset. But right now, they're saying the North Magnetic Pole is wandering about 34 miles a year. And it crossed the international date line in 2017 and is leaving the Canadian Arctic on its way to Siberia. And this, of course, is causing problems for compasses on smartphones, boats, and for airport navigators, especially if you're near where that magnetic pole is. If you're off toward the equator, it's not as bad. A lot of people are wondering if the magnetic poles are about to flip, because analysis of magnetite rocks from the ocean floor have shown it has done that in ages past. It's actually done. It's flipped on over here. Okay, getting into the world of artificial sweeteners, there is a company called Ajinomoto Company. It's a Japanese company that produces most of the world's MSG. It's a major supplier of aspartame, and they have a new artificial sweetener out called Advantame. And the FDA is apparently amending their food additive regulations to provide for its use. Now, senior scientist Lisa Lufferts, as the Center for Science in the Public Interest, is very concerned because in a key cancer study in mice, the number of mice that survived to the end of the study of Advantame was below the FDA's own scientific recommendations. Therefore, the study is inadequate to provide confidence in the safety of a chemical likely to be consumed by millions of people. Well, not this one. Stay away from all those artificial chemicals. And it's just absolutely insane. And I'm wondering, how are all these synthetic chemicals affecting our minds? Because we look around and we see such increasingly bizarre behavior, and we know there's a problem with the prescription psychiatric medications. But what if some of these other chemicals in our food are causing bizarre neurological reactions? It's a question that really needs to be looked at. Okay, in the world of computers, Windows 7 extended security updates will double in price each year. And that means for those of you on Windows 7 Pro, the first year will be $50 per device, next year $100, and then to $200. It's another way of trying to get you to get into Windows 10 subscription. Another story, this one coming out of TechCrunch. Apparently, many popular iPhone apps are secretly recording your screen without asking. More about this when we get back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program here on this Wednesday. And we're talking about a company called TechCrunch that has discovered many popular iPhone apps are secretly recording your screen. In other words, when you tap and swipe, they're keeping a record of it and sending it back to their servers. They don't need to ask for permission. Companies like Air Canada, Hollister, and Expedia are recording every tap and swipe. And these are popular iPhone apps from hoteliers, travel sites, airlines, cell phone carriers, banks, and financiers. And they're monetizing that data. They're making money off of you. I'm not sure how, but then I don't tend to use those apps. Okay, apparently there is a new Macintosh hack that can steal your passwords. It's called the Key Steal Exploit. Was announced by security researcher Linus Hens, and he has a record of discovering other vulnerabilities in the past. He's also a member of Sauercloud, a German computer security team that participates in white hat hacking, what's called capture the flag competitions. So it's another reason to be careful about where you leave your machine. Now, this is a good one. This happened over in China, and apparently there was this Chinese gentleman, 43-year-old Qin Quisheng, who managed to figure out a way to draw over $1 million from ATMs operated by his employer, Hokusai Bank, all by exploiting a crazy flaw. Apparently, the bank's system didn't properly record withdrawals made around midnight and effectively kept spitting out cash without removing the total from the user's account. I'm sure they're going to be fixing that one very, very quickly here. Okay, Firefox is coming out with a new browser called Fission. They're claiming that it will thwart Spectre-style attacks. I still think we ought to catch some of these computer criminals and just crucify them live on national TV. Apparently, Microsoft has launched a new ad campaign for its Office suite today. Usually, that's not something particularly interesting. This one's a little odd. Instead of simply highlighting the features of Word and Excel, Microsoft decided to pitch Office 365 and Office 2019 against each other. As an extra gimmick, it used twins to do so. But Microsoft doesn't really want you to buy Office 2019. The ad makes it very clear. That's because Office 365 is a subscription product, while Office 2019 comes with a perpetual license. It's a one-time sale. I've already moved over to Open Office, because I'm tired of Microsoft's nonsense here. Just unrivaled greed in this country. And we are just completely out of balance. That's the word I was looking for, out of balance. Now, the other day there was a story about this Quadriga cryptocurrency, and the CEO supposedly died taking all the passwords with him, and nobody can get at the money. Now there's an accusation that he may have faked his own death and is on his way to parts unknown. Anyways, there's the music. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here and share it with everyone that you know. Stay out of social media. It's a total desert unless you're into funny kitten videos. Please donate to RBN. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.